Hello, I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS and ESS Small Business. Welcome to this special webinar for small business operators. How can my business survive in these difficult times? The difficult times have been caused by the COVID-19 coronavirus, the natural disasters that have occurred in Australia in 2019 and at the beginning of 2020, droughts, bushfires, floods, cyclones have all caused a lot of problems. And in fact, a lot of us have probably started to forget a bit about the natural disasters because of the onslaught of the coronavirus over the last couple of weeks. But for those farmers, primary producers and small business operators who were affected by the various types of natural disasters, they have a very real need for ongoing support and programs. And we're going to refer to some of those today. And if you were one of the persons that were caught up in those natural disasters, I extend our best wishes to you that you'll be able to recover. Let's look at the business lockdowns, though, that have occurred out of the coronavirus. This was based on announcements made by the Prime Minister after the national cabinet meetings. We've had pubs, clubs, restaurants, except for drive-ins and home deliveries. Cafes, the same, except for drive-ins and home deliveries. So some of these businesses have had to adapt to make sure that they are able to deliver or have drive-in operations. Food courts in shopping centres have been shut down. Casinos have been shut down. Churches, gymnasiums, indoor sports centres, beauty parlours, libraries, real estate auctions and real estate open houses. It's a lot of different types of businesses have effectively been shut down. We've had partial restrictions announced by the Prime Minister last night for hairdressers. Only 30-minute appointments now allowed. I don't know how that's going to go. And not affected at this stage, though, are shopping centres, except for the specific lockdowns that I've referred to, like cafes and restaurants, mining industry, manufacturing, transport, tradies, building houses, building factories, farmers, primary producers. So none of those businesses have been affected by this, this problem. Okay, so let's have a look at what you should do. We've set the scene to tell you what the problem is. I think you need to really review what you as a business operator might be entitled to obtain from the government by government loans and grants that were announced previously for the natural disasters. They're still there. They have deadline dates, but they're all still open, so you can submit applications based on the state that you operate your business in. And obviously, to make a claim, your locality has to be within a declared natural disaster area, and those declarations are made by the responsible state minister in charge of natural disasters. I think you need to make sure you have an understanding of how the government's coronavirus stimulus package is going to apply to you. Now, the first stimulus package was brought down about 10 days ago, and there was a second one announced on Sunday night, and that was passed by the Parliament on Monday night in an all-day session. It was passed unanimously. I think that was wonderful. I noticed there's a bit of bickering going on the sidelines now, though, but when the votes were real and being counted, they all voted unanimously to support the government's package. I just hope it's going to be enough and that the needy businesses get their share of it. Now, the first program out of the government for businesses in the stimulus package is for businesses with turnovers under $50 million per annum. And the businesses will receive a tax-free cash boost of up to $100,000 to help pay wages. Now, this particular item was included in the first stimulus package, and the amount mentioned then was $25,000. It's now gone to $100,000, and the calculation is based on 100%. It was originally 50%, so 100% of the employees' PAYG tax deductions in a quarter, and as long as they don't exceed $50,000, so 100% of the PAYGT deductions from an employee's salary or wages, if that is $50,000 or less, the employer will receive that amount as a credit from the Australian Taxation Office. And that process will be determined when your business activity statement is lodged. So the next business activity statement is for the period ended 31st of March, has to be lodged by the 28th of April, and the tax office will process that. So obviously, if 100% of your pay as you go tax deducted from employees is less than $50,000, you will not have to pay any of that tax. The Australian government is going to pay that for you. I've already said that. It's based on your business activity statement. Now, you will then have to lodge further business activity statements at the 28th of July for the period ended 30th of June and the 28th of October for the period ended 30th of September. The same thing applies. As long as your PAYGT tax liability is less than $50,000, you will not have to pay anything. All you'll have to pay is your GST component to the tax office. If your PAYGT component is more, say $65,000, you'll get an offset of $50,000 and have to pay to the tax office $15,000. That's how that's going to work. And the government has covered it through to the end of September. This is covering the 6-month period that they are hoping that this whole problem is going to be sorted out within. If you pay salaries and wages, but you are not withholding any PAYGT tax, you will receive a minimum payment of $10,000 for the business activity statement to be lodged on the 28th of April. And the same thing will then happen at the 28th of July and the 28th of October. So that's where your PAYGT tax installments don't add up to anything as such, and you are lodging it as a separate business for that. If you've got people who are not paying PAYG tax who are included in your payroll, well, that just comes into the overall determination of that $50,000 amount that I talked about earlier. Let's move on now to the coronavirus supplement, which was announced by the Prime Minister on Sunday. The eligibility for the coronavirus supplement includes sole traders and self-employed persons whose hours worked have fallen or whose income has fallen by more than 20% in both cases as a result of the coronavirus. Now, those people who qualify for the coronavirus supplement, you will receive $550 per fortnight, and this is expected to be paid for 6 months. Let's move on to the early release of superannuation. Sole traders who have qualified for the coronavirus supplement will be able to access their superannuation funds to draw down an amount of $10,000 between now and the 30th of June this year, if they wish. You can also access a further $10,000 of your superannuation fund money in 2020-21. Now, it's worth noting that a number of experts in superannuation have warned against businesses accessing or individuals accessing the superannuation money because they're worried that it's going to affect the overall pool of money that you assemble for your ultimate retirement. My suggestion is that you leave the drawdown of the superannuation money to the last possible opportunity, although you're probably going to give your fund a few weeks' notice. Might be worth making an inquiry to see what amount of notice they need, but see how your cash flow is going before you draw down on your superannuation funds. Subsidy for apprentices. This was announced in the first package produced by the government, and it applies to businesses with turnovers under $50 million who were employing apprentices on the 12th of March 2020. That date's very important. So I assume if you've engaged an apprentice after that date, at first glance, you're not going to be able to claim this subsidy, but you might be able to make inquiries. The subsidy is going to be 50% of the salary or wages that you've paid the apprentice up to a maximum amount of $7,000 per quarter. So obviously, if you're paying your apprentice more than $56,000 per annum, you'll only be able to claim back a gross of $28,000 if this scheme goes on for the full 12 months. The other big announcement in the first stimulus package was a new instant asset write-off. As you know, currently there's a scheme where businesses with turnovers up to $50 million are able to write off assets that they acquire for a value of up to $30,000. Now, the government has really made some significant changes in this. This benefit is now available for businesses with turnovers up to $500 million a year, and the asset write-off is an amount of $150,000. And you can write off as many new acquisitions of $150,000 that you wish. There's no limit. I think the limit probably is you having the cash flow to be able to spend that amount of money. And secondly, that you have got a tax bill that you're wanting to reduce. Now, the purchases must be finalised by 1 July 2020. So you've only got a few days over 3 months in which to implement this if you intend to do it. And there's also a 50% accelerating depreciation deduction that's available on the other assets or balance of assets that you acquire. And this runs through, though, to 30th of June 2021. So really that's in place for about 15 months. So that's the background on where we're at. We've had natural disasters, we've got coronavirus, we've had government programs from the federal government, the state and the territory governments. It's now down to how you're going to action, how you're going to get your business put together. So what's your present position? Businesses need to know that. And you need to be in the right frame of mind. Some people are being rather defeatist in this whole thing. Well, Australia and indeed the Western world has been through a lot of trials and tribulations when you look back over the last 500 years. We can overcome these issues, but you're going to have to think it through and probably work hard and make sure you get some me time to think about it, to make sure you keep yourself fit and healthy, because that's going to be important in this overall process. So the first thing I'd be suggesting is you make sure where your business is. Are you a business that's identified as being a lockdown business? And if so, you should have already been in lockdown situation. And if not, I'd suggest that you start doing something about it very quick. Or is your business operating under restricted trading conditions, which might be something that you've imposed? I wouldn't suggest to anyone that you start putting involuntary restrictions in, unless you've really got it, unless your team's sick, or your customers just won't come to wherever your business premises are. But there's no reason for any business that hasn't been listed in the government lockdowns to be reducing in any way your business activity. You may have some reasons to do some of that, though, especially if you're working in conjunction with an allied business, and that allied business is in the lockdowns, and it just doesn't work that anyone's going to be really coming to you if the other business is not in operating conditions. But you need to have a think about that. So in the first instance, we need to get a clear understanding, or you need to get a clear understanding of your current expected financial position. My suggestion is that you lock yourself in a room with your key people and try to prepare some realistic estimates of what your income will be and the gross profit you're going to earn from that income, so you can ultimately calculate the gross profit week by week for the next 6 months. It's going to be very important to develop this 6-month strategy. You then need to review your team, and this is going to be rather difficult for many of you, I'm sure. In view of those income projections, do you still need the team you've got today, or do you need to reduce your team who are going to be surplus to your requirements over this next 6 months? The government has increased the benefits that are available for people who are laid off in this period. That's a social security responsibility that governments have. My suggestion is you consult your human resources consultant, and if you don't have a human resources consultant, please send me an email, and I'm quite happy to recommend Blackstone Business Services to you. The CEO of which, Jordan Lowry, is a affiliate of ESS Small Business, and he supplies a lot of material for us, and he'll be able to assist you. Because what you need to determine is to make sure that the processes that you're now going to go through comply with the law and the current environment that we're operating businesses in. If the government said that you've got to close your business, that's a pretty major step from a government agency. They're the ones that have issued the instruction that your type of business cannot operate. And what's the termination costs going to be? What's your supply line situation like? This is a very important question for a lot of businesses, especially if you've been getting supplies from China in particular, where this problem originally occurred. Can you contact them? When will you receive your orders that you've lodged with them, the products for those orders? What are the delivery times? Could you renegotiate the payment terms with suppliers? Or could they give you some assistance? It might be in doing a marketing campaign. It might be in supplying to you a personality that you could use in some videos or in actual presentations. Well, you got to be careful these days with presentations, haven't you? We can't have more than 10 people, and then we've got to have 4 square meters per person. So live presentations are probably out, but videos, webinars are able to be presented. What about your landlord? You could contact your landlord and see if you can renegotiate rent payments for a while, perhaps change the lease of the premises. If you don't ask them, you'll never find out. They might not volunteer. I do note that the Prime Minister indicated last night in his address to the media that landlords were high on their agenda for discussions at the National Cabinet tonight. So something might happen about that. Review outstanding debtors. This is very important if you're a business that's giving credit. 4 years ago, Australia was judged as having the longest debtors days outstanding in the world. It was not something to be proud of. 56.4 days, an international consultancy company determined that Australia's debtors days outstanding averaged, and we were the longest in the world. There's been some publications in the last couple of weeks that's indicated the current debtors days outstanding 4 years later is 56 days. So in 4 years, we've reduced by 0.4 of a day. In that period, we've had Prime Minister Turnbull and Treasurer Morrison, as he was then, both doing a lot of work on federal government agencies and state governments to speed up their payment to small business. And some of them now claim, some of those government departments claim, they're paying in 5 days and 20 days, and yet the overall average is only improved by 0.4 days. So I suggest that in your debtors ledger, there is probably some troublesome customers. Now's the time to get onto them and try and get that money from them, or get them into watertight repayment schedules so that you can get some money in. Because whilst the supermarkets are saying they only want to get credit cards used so they don't have to handle cash, I can assure you in our businesses, cash is still king and probably always will be. But they probably don't mean the folding money, do they? Stock or inventory is also very important. Inventory systems build up a whole host of problems, and most people don't have a good look at it. Well, now the time is to get a couple of your team members together, look at the stock, how much money have you got tied up in it? Is there any problem stock in there? Is there any slow moving stock? You know, things that you only sell one of every 12 months. Or is there last season's stock, especially if you're in the fashion industry? You probably won't sell it for another 3 or 4 years until everyone starts wearing orange again or whatever. My suggestion, put it all together, have a stock sale and try and get some cash back in, because it's eating its head off in warehousing charges. Whilst interest rates are lower than what they are traditionally, they are still a cost. So get rid of it, get the cash in. Surplus assets. It's amazing how many surplus assets most businesses build up. So again, it might be a good time to get those surplus assets together and see if you can sell them to bring in some cash. Some people say to me, oh, we need that special machine. It always seems to be a machine that costs $200,000 or $300. And I query and say, well, how many hours a year is it used for? You get figures like 25. I said, what, a month? No, a year. Well, why wouldn't you go and hire one? Oh, well, it mightn't be available on the day we want it. Well, I think that's something that management needs to manage. I'd be trying to get rid of that 200 to 300 grand machine if I was you, and just hire one when you need it to do a particular job. And if that means you've got to schedule your work program a bit more diligently than what you might normally do so, that's part of the cost. But in the meantime, you may have put $200,000 or $150,000 back into your bank account. So think about organizing surplus asset sales. Will probably help your business. So my suggestion is you do all this process with the aim of then being able to prepare an updated budget and cash flow forecast. And whilst I didn't mention then, we also need profit and loss accounts prepared, preferably to the end of February 2020. So you're going forward. What's the position going to be? Based on the income projections you prepared, and then the various, maybe some extra cash you're going to recover, which is obviously going to go into cash flow. Make sure that if there's any security on those assets, though, that you've taken into account, then any monies you've got to pay back to a bank or a lender. So you can prepare an accurate budget and cash flow forecast. And then if you've done all this work yourself, I think you should be making an appointment with your accountant to talk to your accountant. Now, if you're uncertain of how you're going to do all this, you can involve your accountant virtually from day one in this process. If your accountant is very busy doing tax return work, and that's all he or she is really interested in doing, if you send me an email, I can suggest to you some names of accountants and business advisors who are committed to supplying business advisory services, commercial services to clients. And these people are situated all over Australia. They're subscribers to our firm. And you can then, I'll send you some names and you can select who you're happy to talk to if your accountant does not want to be involved. Unfortunately, after you get to this stage, the decision may be to close the business. I hope if any of you watching this video are caught up in that situation, that you're able to exit the business for a while, get the best recovery possible, and be able to come back into business at some future date. But unfortunately, the Australian Small Business Association CEO, Peter Strong, last week indicated that he thought 120,000 businesses might not reopen, having gone through a close down period during this process. He also indicated that his organisation was estimating that 10% of the 5 million employees in small business and medium-sized enterprises, so 500,000 people, would be added to the unemployed before this coronavirus was over. That's a lot of people. I mean, it highlights the reason the federal government is producing these stimulus packages to try to keep those numbers as low as possible. You might then be in a position to present a strong business case and an application to your bank for a loan. Now, I can half hear some of you that are singing out to me and saying, well, you went to your bank 3 or 4 weeks ago and the bank knocked you back. But there's been a big change. The federal government and the Reserve Bank have released over $90 billion to the banking system for loans to be made to small business and medium-sized enterprises for up to 3 years. So that's the big change. So go back and talk to your bank again. You might get a far different hearing this time, because up until this decision was made by the federal government and the Reserve Bank, banks were very worried about all the various margins and ratios that they have to maintain, and they basically weren't prepared to lend to small business and medium-sized enterprises. I think you might find that that's changed. And according to some Reserve Bank minutes and press releases, this funding is going to be available not just to the big 4 banks, but across the entire bank and non-bank section. 120 different businesses are going to participate in the opportunity to be able to distribute these extra funds, plus some of their own funds, of course, to small business and medium-sized enterprises. So let's look at some of the ongoing management for this crisis. Suggestion number 1, create a coronavirus disaster team. Team of 2 or 3 people that meets daily to analyse what's happening in your business, monitors some of these key things, the debtors, the sale of surplus plant, the what's going on with inventory, because none of these things is going to happen in 5 minutes. And you've got to be careful that it's not decided to do something and then it's all forgotten about. You need to be monitoring it. And also monitoring the pronouncements 2 or 3 times a week that the Prime Minister is making after the National Cabinet meeting, that, as you know, is involving the state premiers and the chief ministers from the 2 territories. They're making decisions, they're being announced, and a lot of these are then being enacted the next day. The other reason for monitoring that is the Minister for Finance was allocated $40 billion in the special session of Parliament last week to meet any new funding commitments that are obvious the government should have supported or accommodated in one of their stimulus packages. $40 billion. Now, those announcements will just get made, and it would be a good idea for you to be monitoring that through your business's coronavirus disaster team, because you might be able to lodge an application for some of that money or do whatever's got to be done to get it. There won't be enough money probably to go to everyone, so being fast off out of the blocks could well be very rewarding for some of you. Review strategies to enable team members to work from home. A lot of businesses are encouraging their team to work from home, but working from home is not as simple as what it sounds, especially when you might have a husband and wife team now both going to work at home. And we're running into school holidays, so the children might be at home as well. Unless you've got a house that splits quite easily into a business area as distinct from the home accommodation area, there's going to be some issues. I work at home. I've done so for over 20 years now, but we got an upstairs, downstairs, and downstairs is the office, and it's quite workable. Got its own phone, own entrance, and it's able to be quite separate from the accommodation and living quarters upstairs. Not everyone's going to have that situation, so there'll be some challenges with people working from home. The other thing, of course, is not every part of Australia's got NBN. I live in an area which is one of the early adapters or where the early NBN installations were made. I'm not going to give them a commercial, but let's just say that we have got NBN. A lot of parts of Australia still haven't got it, apparently. And I hear of problems in people who have got staff working at home, that communications are dropping out, people can't hear, a lot of problems. So it's not going to be that easy. The other problem that you need to think about is your insurance covers and workplace health and safety, especially if you find 2 or 3 of your team are going to one of their houses to do their work. This is supposed to be work, not play. And also, is there some insurance and workers' compensation, workplace health and safety issues come into play? I think there is. I'd be talking to your insurance broker and to your human resources, workplace health and safety consultants. If you're not already doing it, I'd suggest that you create daily team meetings or huddles. Break the team up, especially now that you might have some of your team working in the office and some working at home. Use Zoom communications technology, bring them all together for a 3 to 5 minute discussion every day. I notice some people are saying they're doing that 2 or 3 times a day. That might be necessary at first, especially if the team member has not got the ability to generate their own work as such. They got their clients, they got their files, they know what they got to do. If they're a more junior team member, work might have to be getting sent to them. Someone might be having to give them instructions. So there should be this ongoing dialogue. But the big suggestion is that you make sure that there's at least a meeting of teams, not the whole firm together, meeting of, unless you're very small, meeting of team to work, to go through what's on the agenda for today, what's got to get done, what's their problems. Very important to keep in touch with suppliers, and we mentioned suppliers earlier. And I think a lot of you might want to have a look at trying to create some new supplier chains. I think we've all had a wake-up call of getting a lot of supplies out of one country, e.g. China. I don't know if that's in the best interests of Australian industry. Perhaps supply chains should be split. Perhaps more consideration should be given to actually manufacturing certain products back in Australia so that we haven't got these problems magnified that's been going on of late. Keep in touch with customers, very important. Tell your customers what's going on. Try to get an idea of what's happening in their businesses, what's their orders likely to be, where are things headed. Cash flow of the business is very important. You need to continually monitor it and follow through to make sure you're getting payments in. It's no use setting up a debtors policy and then leaving it to your most junior employee to worry about it. That's been very unfair on that team member. In these difficult times, debt collection, especially off major customers and big amounts, should be handled by someone at a fairly senior level. In some cases, the CEO, other cases, that band right underneath the CEO. Sales manager, production manager, admin manager if you've got one. Because some of these customers won't take much notice of anyone else. Review costs. Costs are the big issue. You can probably control your prime cost of your goods that you're actually buying and then doing something to and selling. But what's going on with your costs of all types of products? I think your committee should be going through on a line-by-line basis, looking at every cost and working out how improvements could be made. Is that expense needed? Is that automatic payment we're making, is that needed? Let's see if we can reduce the costs of operation. And update, if required, your team manuals on things like the team, especially the rules that you may have had to write now on coronavirus. If someone gets ill, what's the policy? Are they automatically required to go into 14 days isolation? What happens if they have a family member or someone who they know or play sport with that has contacted the virus? Do they understand their responsibility to the total team, to your customers, to your suppliers, to the community at large, that they need to go into 14-day isolation? So that's an overview of where you're probably at this stage. There's a lot more to be done, but I don't want you to feel disheartened. You might have a bit of a down day, yes, 1 or 2 days, but if you're going to be running your businesses and showing leadership, you need to be now setting a plan. And my suggestion is the plan basically is a financial plan, so that you know where you're going to go. We don't know how long this is going to last. Scott Morrison is obviously working on a 6-month cycle plan. I noticed in today's press that the American president is talking about having America fixed up and sorted out of this problem by Easter. I know he's been a very smart businessman over the years. I don't know that I can agree that he's going to be able to pull that rabbit out of the box, but it will be very interesting to see how President Trump goes in that. But he seems to have broken ranks with every other Western leader and saying that he can achieve what would undoubtedly be a miracle over the next 3 weeks, because if my sums are right, it's only 3 weeks to Easter. So I think you need to be planning a little bit longer, but the most important period now is the next 2 weeks. What are you going to do that gets your team on a war footing to be able to battle your way out of this problem? So ESS BIZTOOLS can assist you. ESS BIZTOOLS is part of the ESS group, which includes ESS BIZTOOLS, and we're talking about ESS small business today, and we can assist you as a small business or medium-sized enterprise. To get more details on what the services that we can offer, please go to our website, www.esssmallbusiness.com.au, and you can click onto the Survival in Difficult Times product package. There's individual papers on each of the grants and loans that the government has supplied, together with support payments and incentives to spend that one-off investment. And there's individual summaries on what the various governments in Australia are doing for businesses relative to the coronavirus. Now, some of these papers are free because we want you to be able to get an example of what we do when we produce this sort of material. And there's others for fees. Fees range from $22 down to $11, including GST. And then we've got 4 packages that are available. We've got the business survival package for SMEs. It costs us $69, including GST, and it's got some key components, as you can see on the screen. Survival checklist for your business, characteristics of a well-run business, so you can get an idea of what we are trying to encourage you to look at. A 10-point checklist for coronavirus, and the Business Plus edition for March. Business Plus is a newsletter that ESS BIZTOOLS produces for its member accountants to send to their clients, small businesses. You may even be receiving one if you happen to be dealing with one of our subscribing firms. The March edition, 2020, was virtually totally on this whole problem. So that's why we're sending that to you, so you can see what we've been writing. The next package is called the Business Evaluation for SMEs. This is a reference paper which analyzes 40 different components of a business: debtors management, work in progress management, stock management, employees, budgets, cash flow forecasts, and so on. So it gives you some detailed material as a guide as to what's important about those particular items. And that can be acquired for $120, including GST. We then have the Survival in Difficult Times workbook. The workbook includes 37 questionnaires on obviously 37 different subjects. Some of the questionnaires are 2 or 3 pages long, which will set you some thinking to do with your team. You can work with your accountants if you wish to go through and objectively analyze components of your business. There is a link to the paper before, which I'll just go back to, the Business Evaluation for SMEs. They are linked, so that if there's a item within the workbook that we thought that you might require some additional clarification on, we have linked it back to the reference material. So you can go back and read a bit more background about it, because this workbook here has just got a series of questions and a space for you to complete. Then we have the combined package. So in the combined package, we have put the Survival in Difficult Times workbook and the Business Evaluation for SMEs, together with some other material. You get the Business Evaluation for SMEs, you get a video we're going to start producing from the week after next on business survival. We have put together a team of 10 to 12 experts. We'll have 2 or 3 of them available each week, and we'll be producing a video that we will be making available to our subscribers. And we're going to also send you the monthly newsletter from Business Plus through to the 30th of September 2020, because most of that period we will be concentrating on survival in difficult times, trying to help people get through this process. And there's also the papers that I talked about before on the government grants, government loans for the natural disasters, and also for the coronavirus support packages from the various governments in Australia. So they're the packages that we can make available to you. We have a further webinar which we'll be updating material on, because the National Cabinet's meeting every couple of days at present, and they're releasing new things. So we'll be updating this presentation and making a further one at a different time altogether, which we hope is more business friendly than perhaps 11:30 a.m. AEST is. So on Wednesday, 1st of April at 2020, sorry, at 6:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. AEST, we will be presenting that webinar, 7:30 p.m. AEDT. And I've got a registration address. To register, please go to www.esssmallbusiness.com.au/webinar registration. esssbiztools.com.au/webinar registration. And I look forward to talking to you. If you want to come back for another update, or some of your colleagues or friends or your mates who are in business, any type of business, so that they can get this overview. I noted that no one sent me through any questions at this stage. That's all right. If you think of any questions later on, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. This is going to be a very difficult period for many of you. And the team at ESS BizTools would like, and ESS Small Business would like to wish you every success in this venture. Please stay confident. If you would like to ask any questions to me on any aspect of the services that we're providing and how we might be able to assist you, or how some of our accounting or affiliate members all around Australia could help you, don't hesitate to send me an email, please. peter@essbiztools.com.au, and I will get back to you. So in closing, thank you for joining us for this webinar, and good luck in your business ventures over the next 6 months. Goodbye.